Hi guys, and welcome to our fourth lesson on the Dev Heroes program. Today we're going to take the second part of our C# fundamentals. This will be our last lesson on C# because we need to move on to Windows Phone and Windows 8 app development as soon as we can. This is in no way all you need to know about C#. There's a lot more that you need to know, but then this should get you going for now, and you need to do a lot more reading after this. Today we'll be talking about the while iteration statements, reading data from a file, adding a file to a project, working with strings, and understanding and creating classes. So to start off, we'll get on with the while loop. So to do that, first we'll create a new project, as we did in the first part of this of C#. So here I'll choose a console application and we'll name this read text while. Click OK, and this will create our project. So when our project is created, we can see our using statements up here, our namespace, the class we're working in, and the main method. You shouldn't be strangers to these things because I already explained most of them during the first part. So now, for this example, we are going to be taking a look at the while loop in action by reading data from a text file, how to add other files to our project, how to work with null values, and how to change the properties in our project. So first of all, we want to add a file to this project. So I'll go to my project in the Solution Explorer, right click, then I'll go to add, then add a new item. My new item, we have a lot of options here, but then I'll scroll down to a text file, and I'm going to name this file test. This test file will be what we'll be using for our demonstration. So in this file, I'm just going to enter some values: 8, 16, 32, 40, 48, 56. Yeah. Then I'll save this and close the file. So you can see in the Solution Explorer that our text file has been added to our project. Let's go back to program.cs. I'm going to type so many lines of code, but I'll explain it after I'm done. So give me a second. So Right now, I've written a bunch of code. If you don't understand this, I'll go about dissecting this very soon. When we take a look at the stream reader statement here, you realize that we have a red squiggly line under it, which means that the compiler is seeing this as an error. So if I bring my mouse cursor here and hover around the stream reader, you can see there's a little option down here. So when I click it, it gives me the option to add a using statement. The stream reader is not contained in the default namespaces that are provided when you create a project. So you can either use the full name, that is system.io.streamreader, or you can add a using statement which will which the compiler will automatically search for the stream reader class. So I'll decide to use the using statement because it will make my life relatively easier. After doing that, you can see that there are no errors in my code. Now, to taking a look at this, the first line, that is the stream reader, my reader is called to new stream reader, is creating an instance of the stream reader class called my reader. This instance is called an object. An object is primarily defined as an instance of a class. So this stream reader class acts like a straw to help suck up every line in our text file. These lines of code are going to interact with our text file. This statement is not complete because I didn't add the name of our text file, so I'll just add test.txt. So the stream reader class will suck up every line that is in our text file. Then on the second line, we are creating an empty string which will contain the value each time our new line is read from the text file. So we'll first test the condition here. While the line is not equal to null, we then input a line from the object my reader into the variable. Then we test the condition to see if a line was indeed put into the variable. If it is, we execute the code in the if block. If not, it will execute the code and test the condition again. So, saying this again, while the condition is true, that is, keep reading from the stream reader every line in our text file until we reach a line that is null. A null value just means that it is unknown and indeterminate. It doesn't mean that it's empty. It just means that you can't understand or read exactly what is there, so it's null. Continue to execute the block of code here. After that, I left out a line here. When you are using external resources, it's good to release them after you're done. So for the text file that we are hogging up right now, we would have to release it. So I'm going to type my reader.close, and this will release the file after we finish reading every text from it. So now I think we are ready to execute to see how this works. I click start. Realize that we are getting an exception. It says that file not found exception was unhandled. An unhandled exception occurred with the type system.io.file not found exception. This says that it's good to read the information whenever you get an error because to tell you exactly what you're doing wrong. So it says that I could not find the file in C users, my computer name, Visual Studio 2013. It can't find the file, which means that our file is not present where the compiler is looking to find the file. We can easily rectify this. So let me stop debugging this. Now, whenever you create a file, say a text file, there are some properties that you can set. So when we come down here in the solution in the properties window, we have some properties here that have their corresponding attributes. So we have the build action. Then what we need to change here is copy to output directory. The attribute is set to do not copy at the moment. So we will change, we have options here to copy always. Whenever we build our application, to always copy the file to the directory, or we'll copy if newer. When we make changes to the file, it will only copy when we make changes to the file. I'm going to use this option and start the application again. So as you can see, it has read all the lines from our text file by using the code that we provided. So now this file is now resident in our documents folder. Let's see, Visual Studio projects, read text while, then our bin directory, debug directory, and we can now see that our test file is now here. We can open it just like any other file, and you see that the information is displayed here just like it would. Now we're going to move on to working with strings. Many applications nowadays, let me start a new project. So many applications nowadays require managing text somehow, be it managing notes, storing information on customers, or in content management applications where entire paragraphs have to be put into a blog or a website. All of these scenarios require you to work with strings. Mastering strings is a vital skill in .NET, and we are going to take a look at how this is made easier by the .NET Framework class library. Now, let's take an example. We have a string called my strength. Is equal to go to your C5. Now, this is the normal way you'd write something and it will normally work. You'd write something to output it to the screen, output a string to the screen, and it will normally work. But this is the case. We curiously have a very little squiggly red line saying that there's an error somewhere. Now, this particular string has a /, and this is what is causing our error. If I try to run this, let me run this. It seems I'm getting a different kind of error. But here we are using a /, and in C# a / has a special meaning. It's used as an escape sequence, and it's used to produce other special characters and commands. So to produce a /, you need to add another / to make it escape that sequence, to add the special character. So with this, we run our application and you see that it works. You realize that the first time we're trying to run it, it gave us an error. So the forward slash here is helping us produce another forward slash. In strings, you'll find that this is very useful. Let me show you another example. Let me comment this out. Move down one step. Now, sometimes you need to use double quotes in specifying what you're writing. Say string, my string is equal to the first book I read was titled My Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, the compiler is telling us here that there's a whole lot of things going here that are wrong. What we wanted to do was just to put Jack and the Beanstalk in double quotes, but here it is telling us that we ended our string at the word titled, and we are now trying to type something that it clearly cannot understand. This is another situation where escape sequences come into play. In order to fix this, we would introduce a forward slash at the beginning of before our single quote here, and introduce another one here. This would then tell our compiler that all of these things here are part of our string. It's not terminating and initiating another string. We are saying that all of these things are part of our string, so please run it as it is. So if I click start, see that our double quotes are put in our display to the window just like we wanted to. Now, we can also use the escape character to insert special types of characters like a new line. Now, sometimes you're writing a string and you want it to move to a new line after a certain word. So let's see another example. String is equal to, this is a new line. Now I want to insert a new line after the word a. So I bring my forward slash n is the special character for initiating a new line in your project. So I click start and realize that after this is it moves on to a new line to write new line. These are just brief examples of escape sequences. Now there is a link that you can follow, or there's a link that you can explore on MHDN. Let me quickly move on to that site so you can take a look at it. Now, I'll provide this link below this video and on my blog, so don't worry about how you're going to get it. Now, it has all the special characters, escape sequences that you would need, or from time to time as you progress in your programming adventure, as I'll put it. So we have the backspace character, form feed, new line, horizontal tab, etc. So this is just a quick look at some of these escape sequences. Now, in the previous lesson, I showed you string formatting. So string formatting is just finding a way to put your string into in the way you want. Sorry. Now I can easily format the string by saying that so is what he said to me. Now what I'm doing here is inserting the value of this variable here, my string, by using the insertion syntax here. And as I said earlier, insertion syntaxes are zero based. That is, they start from 0 and they move from there, just like arrays and their positions. So here, when I start and run this, you'd realize that this is a new line, is what he said to me, is displayed. So the content of our variable is added to our string here. Now this is just a small example of string formatting. There is another link that has information on using string.format, and that's available here on this site. When you go, you see a lot of examples of using string.format method, and I'd recommend that you read this because you would need it at some point. Now we have done a little concatenation using the plus operator. Now this is bad in a way, and I'm going to show you why it is bad in using the plus operator. So let's take a normal concatenation, normal string concatenation. Let me comment this out. My string is equal to. Now I'm going to write a for statement. Tap from 1 to 100. Enter. My string is equal to my string plus dash dash. We're going to use the toString method here. Then we want to display after the for loop has exited. Right line. My string. This is a very simple example of concatenation where we are adding the values here to the string. So every time this loop runs, the value of I is added to the string. If we click this to run it, you can see that we have 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 99. So in taking a look at this, my string is first empty. Then we add the value of I to my string. We add this double hyphen here, and we add the value here. So each time the for loop goes through the block of code, a value is concatenated to the string we have. So it ends up producing a very long string at the end. That's the one I showed you in the console window. There's an easier way of writing this statement. Excuse me. You can easily wipe this out and write plus equals. Writing my string plus equals this is just the same as writing my string is equal to my string plus all the information here. Another simple way of looking at this is I plus equals to 1 means that I is equal to I plus 1. You should note this down, as it saves a lot of time in writing the name of the variable twice in just one statement. Now this will give you the same output because it's the same code that you're writing, but you're just being smart about it. So let's close this. Now, concern is that the plus sign works for small examples like this, but when a string is declared and initialized, it takes a small portion of the computer's memory. So if you concatenate the string by adding additional values to it, there's work being done behind the scenes to create another space in memory that's big enough to contain the new string that you created, plus the new stuff. And that is bad memory management. So for our application, when we keep going through the loop and adding more to it, the work being done behind the scenes is such that we are creating new spaces and occupying it with our new variable. Now, for small examples, you wouldn't really feel this, but then consider the fact that you're working on something very large and you're having this bad memory management. This wouldn't be very efficient, and in programming, efficiency is something that a lot of people look out for. So a better way to do this whole thing is by using the Stringbuilder class. It's more memory friendly and it's easier to write. So let's take a look at this. Now let me simply comment out this side of the code. Now let me come down here and write Stringbuilder. My string is equal to new Stringbuilder. I'll talk about the new statement when we get to classes, so don't worry if you don't really understand what it is. It just helps you instantiate an object. So we're going to use a Stringbuilder class here. Now we wouldn't need the information here. We've created an object and all we need to do is to append data to it, to add what we want to add to it. So I'll come here and type my string dot append. Then what I want to append in the beginning is the double hyphen. When I come down here, my string, then I want to append something again. I want to append the variable that we're using in our for loop. So essentially, we are adding to the object my string every time we go through the loop. So here we are not concatenating, but we are just adding in a very efficient way. It doesn't do the shifting in memory. Now this will work the same way. Let me run this and you see the output is, I can't even say relatively the same, it's the same because we're just adding to our object. We are not adding to the variable, and these are two different concepts. Now there are a lot of methods that are used to manipulate strings. Strings have their own methods that make using them a bit versatile. Now let's take a little look at this. Let me comment out all of this. Just like the toString method that we used for our int variable, there are other methods associated with strings. That is the replace method, the toUpper method, the substring method, and we'll take some examples of these methods shortly. Now let's create a string my string is equal to it's better to be lucky than good. Now we're going to use the substring method. So my string is equal to, we are putting whatever results we get back into the same variable we created. My string dot, and here IntelliSense, I told you about IntelliSense. IntelliSense will give you the list of methods that are available for strings. You can go through this and look for exactly what you want. But I know what I want, and that's the substring method. So dot substring, and I'll then use IntelliSense. Now, I'm being told here that the substring method has two overloads. That is, one that accepts an integer as a parameter, and the second that accepts two arguments, that is the start index and the length. Now, what the substring method does is that it retrieves a part of your string from the main string that you stated. That is removing just the portion that you want. So it's just like editing it in the part you want. So the first overload just, the main substring method just takes arguments that indicates the start index, where you want us to start the string from. But then the second overload takes a start index and indicates the length that you want it to be. So you can let it start at position 6 and let it be of length 12. So it start at position 6 and it will count 12 characters, 12 places in your string and end it there. We're going to use that. So we want to start at position 6, and the start index is 0 base, just like arrays. So if I want position 6, I'll indicate 5. Since it's 0 base, it starts at 0. So position 6 will be at index 5. So, and I want it to be 12. I want it to count 12 characters and give me the value of that string there. So let me add our termination statement. Now let's run this and see. You can see that in our output window we have better to be. B here is at position 6. If we are to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can see that it took B as a start index and counted 12 spaces, that is at to B, and we display that to the screen. Now another method you can take a look at is, let me comment this out, is the toUpper method, which changes every character in our string to uppercase. So my string is equal to my string dot toUpper, and this will generally change everything to uppercase letters. This is useful when you are trying to compare data that a user has inputted into your application. Sometimes it can be lowercase and you want everything to be uppercase to match what you have in your system, and this is a very good way to do it. There's a toLower method that does the same, and there's also the replace method. Replace, just like the name sounds, it replaces some value with another value that you'd specify. So if we were to type my string dot replace, now replace takes in two parameters, that is what you are looking at, what you want to replace and what you want to replace it with. So now in our string, I want to replace all the empty spaces with double hyphens. So I'll indicate that I want to replace all the empty spaces. As you can see here, we have the old character and the new character. So we're replacing the spaces with our new characters, that is double hyphen. Now I'll terminate and click start. Now you can see here that it's better to be lucky than good. It's now being separated by hyphens instead of spaces. So now I'll click close, and we will now move on to classes. You should read more on strings. There are a lot of information that you will need on strings. This is just an overview of what you can do. I'm trying to get you to have a feel of C#, the kind of syntax that we are working with. So you should do some more reading on these things. Okay, now we're now moving on to classes. Remember, in the first part of C# fundamentals lessons, I referred to classes as a container for related methods. Now, the console class here is a good example of a class. In the console class, there are methods, there are related methods that we can access. WriteLine is a method, readLine is a method, and we access these methods by using the member accessor. That's the period or the full stop, as we use as a punctuation in the English language. Now, in our use of helper methods, that's the supersecret formula method that we wrote, we talked about how methods should be created inside of a class, inside of a body of a class. I oversimplified that explanation in order to allow most of us to follow, but as you would come to realize, virtually everything that you would do in C# is either related to a class or is in a class. Now, this is for you to better understand how classes are used in the .NET Framework library. Classes are, how should I put this? In order to be able to programmatically define real world concepts, we employ something called object-oriented analysis and design, where we model real-world scenarios with objects. And by doing this, we are doing object-oriented programming. Now, anything you can think about can be modeled in such a way that you can write code that will efficiently describe that process. Now, take an example as a car business. We have a car lot and we want to keep inventory of all the cars we have there. To start off, we need to think of a car as the main thing, so we can have a class called a car. Now, a car here has properties. It has a model, it has a make, it has a color, and it has a year. Now, there are functionalities that we can execute to give us information about the car, and these are methods. Say we want to determine the value of the car. To do that, we need to write a method, and to do that, we are going to call that method in order to retrieve the value of the car. Let me start by creating a project called classes so that we can take a good look at this. Console application, let's call this classes. Click OK. Now, here we have our class program. That's the main class where we have our main method. So in order to create another class, there are two ways. You can either go to the project, right click it, and go to add. You see class down here. Or this will create a new class. But here, since it's a very simple program, I would like to create a class in this window. When you're working and you're writing a lot of code, it's advisable to create your classes separately so that you can easily move from one tab to the other, so that you can easily navigate your code, because sometimes you can get lost in there. Now, to start off, we are going to create a class. So to create a class, we're going to use the keyword class. We're going to call the class car. Now, when we use the keyword class here, it tells the .NET framework that all the code contained between the curly braces are part of the class car. Now, all the elements in that code block are called members of the class. So we have already talked about methods, which form members of the class. Now, classes have properties. As I was talking about, cars have properties such as the make, model, the year, the color, the engine type, etc. There are other members of classes that we wouldn't look into. We'll take a look at properties and methods here. But there are other types such as fields, enumerations, events, and more. You should read more on events because we'll be employing them during our app development lessons. Now, we're going to create 4 properties for the car class. That is the make, the model, the year, and the color. These define attributes of the particular car we want to find on the car lot. Think of properties as an attribute of an instance of the class. We can set attributes in code, or we can retrieve attributes in code. And just for reference sake, we define a method as a name block of code that resides in a class and performs a specific action once it is called. Now, for our example, we would create a simple method that's going to calculate the value of the car. Now, let's go about creating our properties. Remember code snippets that we use for our for loop. We're going to use them in creating our properties. So when you type prop, you click tab. Now it creates the property for you. It simplifies it. This creates a property that is auto implemented. Now, for properties, you need to set the type of property it is and the name of the property. So our first is the make. So it's a string and the make and make. When I'm done, I press enter and it takes me to the next line. So I type in prop again, string, and I want it to be the model. Click enter, type prop again. I want the year to be an integer. Tab, enter. Then prop for a color, string, color. We're now finished creating our 4 properties. Now, you should note that when you define a custom class, as we've done here, you are defining a new data type, just like a string or an integer, just that it's more complex. A class represents a blueprint of which we will take that blueprint to create instances of it. So we have the general car, which has a make, model, a year, and a color. But then we have different cars on the car lot which have different attributes of that same property. So we can have a Toyota, we can have a BMW, we can have a Chevrolet, and they would have different years, different models, and different color. But then we would take that same car blueprint to represent all of these things. Now you can use that blueprint to create instances, that is objects of the same type. Object is described as an instance of a class. Now let's go on here to set properties. So we specify the type, my new car, is equal to new car. As I said earlier, the new operator creates a new instance of the class in memory. It goes to memory, looks for a location that can store our object, and places it there. Now that we have created an instance of the class, we need to set the properties. So here we have the set and the get. We are setting the properties of the object. So my new car dot make is equal to Toyota. My new car. Realize that as I keep typing the name of the object, IntelliSense is giving me the options I have. That is giving me access to the properties that I already specified. That is the the color, the make, the model, and the year, and some of the methods that I have associated with them. So I'm going to set the model. I'm hard coding this because this example I'm just trying to show you this, but in a real world application, you will either present this in a web page or a graphical user interface and ask users to enter the information regarding the car so that you can set these properties. And when they are being referenced, you can get the values specified in these properties. That's the get set by the properties. So model is equal to Camry. Now my new car dot year is equal to 2014. My new car dot color is equal to blue. Now, as I said, we use the name of the instantiated class, that is the object, my new car, to access each of the properties contained in the class car and use the equal sign to assign a value to that property. Now, using this information, we can now do something like this. Console here. Now we're formatting the string to display the values of these properties. We're getting the values of these properties here. So you can rearrange them as you want just by how you want them displayed. So let's add a console.readline. And this is done. I see we have an error in here. So it says that format exception was unhandled. Let me stop this and take a look at year, new color, model. Let's see. Let's run this again. Getting the same error. What could be wrong? So here I realize my error now. This is what I was talking about. I mistakenly did something wrong here. I stated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 insertion statements, but here I am having 1, 2, 3, 4, and I just need 3. So if I run this, see, it runs smoothly now. We all fall prey to these mistakes every now and then, so make sure you check your code very well. So we have a 2014 blue Toyota Camry. Now, a class is a custom data type, and like any data type, you can use it in any part of your application. We will now create a method inside the class program that would help us retrieve the value of the car. This method will take an argument of type car and return a value. Now, I'm going to try to keep this very simple. So let's write private static. IntelliSense wasn't my friend there. Static double return value. Now, we just created a method here, and this method is of type double, and it's returning just 0.00, and let's return 100. Sorry. Now, this is a very simple method. So what we're going to do next is to notice that since we created a custom data type, we can now use it as argument to our method. Now, the name I specified as argument is the same as the name of the class, but C# is case sensitive, so these two are two different things entirely. Now, we will then try and run this. Let me comment this out and write here total my value is equal to determine value. Then we're going to pass in our object. Now, I've made an error here, but I'll fix it very soon. Console.writeLine my value. Notice that I didn't escape the main method before I started creating my method. Bear in mind that when creating a new method, you have to leave the current method you are in before you create another one. So I'm going to cut this. go to where our curly brace ends and put our method there. And yeah, so when I run this will just return 100 because this method is returning 0.00 and we are putting that value into a new variable here and displaying it to the screen. Now we can just as easily put this method into the class below. Let me comment this out and do it and just demonstrate that. So come down here, public my use of private and public here is something you should read on due to time and the length of this video. I'd like to keep it short, but you should read more on methods, classes, object-oriented programming. You should read more on it because you are going to need it. So created a new method that is returning now. You can just come up here again, copy this, comment this out, we're not going to write it the same way. My new car dot, we are now accessing what we have in our class, and as you can see, determine market value is now part of the IntelliSense options here. So determine market value, when we run it, apparently I have some errors. Where is this error? I missed the semicolon. Oh yeah, never miss your semicolons. Start and everything is working good. This will bring our lesson to an end. In this lesson, we talked about the while iteration statement. We looked at how you can read data from a file, add data to your project, working with strings, that is the concatenation statement, how you can avoid using the plus operator to concatenate your statements and use the Stringbuilder class, and working with the stream reader class to extract data from a file, how to use escape sequences, how to format your strings. Then we also took a look at classes, how to create classes, members of classes, properties, methods, how to create properties, using auto-implemented properties using the code snippets, and some object-oriented concepts, modeling real world situations into code. That is thinking of a problem in a way that you can easily model and write and program about. I'd recommend that you read more on object-oriented programming because that is the future. That's your future in programming. It's been nice having this lesson, and please stay tuned for our next lesson that would be on Windows Phone. Thank you. Have a great day.